Hi, everybody. I'm Adrian from the Peace Genesis Project.
I'm Josh.
And Josh is a channel for SOTU. And you can look us up and decide whether you think that's real or woo-woo or what. But they have some very interesting things to say to us now. So we hope you enjoy.
All right. Okay. So as not to take things too seriously, um, here we go. We actually have a couple of spectators, so we'll see what trouble we can't get into. All right. Here we go. All right. Look at this moment. Hello, Shell
Hello.
and Lisa. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Nice, Lisa. Nice to meet you. Give us a moment. All right. So, what do we wish to talk about today? The dynamic ultimately is, as we have been saying for weeks now, things are getting more and more chaotic. The energy seems to be folding in on itself, and all we can say to you, the magic word, breathe, breathe. Yeah. You know that a dynamic of the 4 count breath. Have you ever practiced that dynamic with the 4 count inhale, 4 count hold, 4 count exhale, and as you exhale, you say, I am here now.
I haven't tried that.
Well, why don't you try it and see what happens? And what it does is it is a dynamic of a reset. When you are feeling fear, when you are
Mm.
feeling that sort of dynamic of energy and you don't have a real handle on where it's coming from, just that 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, and the affirmation, I am here now. That goes beyond any dynamic of programming and puts you back in the moment. Just a simple little thing that you can begin to do to be able to handle some of the, what shall we say, more chaotic energy that is going on in your world right now. Well, major juxtapositions everywhere, aren't there?
Mm.
Today is the day they say there is going to be peace in the Middle East. And yet there are so many of you that doubt that dynamic. So, it's a wonder of you think about what your initial responses are to things and how important your initial responses are. Ultimately, we keep talking about the dynamic of the choices to be made. Are they love choices or are they fear choices? And as you move throughout the dynamics of your day, even if it's just small little things that you can utilize in order to be able to make the love choices and not the fear choices. And we realize that there can be all different parts of yourself at play, but there can also be the essential, authentic you that is stepping outside, willing to step outside of that dynamic of the chaos that so many others are experiencing. Is it possible for you, each of you as individuals, to believe that you are healed enough, you are whole enough? And that you don't have to keep paying any more dues in order to exist in this world. That, in fact, all you really need to do is relax and have fun. Well, it's the bottom line, isn't it? So many of you have spent your time and your energy trying to heal either yourself or others. When is it going to be enough? Hmm? When is it going to be enough? When are you going to start? And we're not, there's so many of you out there that have been selfless. It's time for you to care about yourselves a little bit more and care about the dynamics of your world. Where do you wish to live? Who do you wish to be? Maybe you can only create a community of one or two. Maybe it can just be you sitting there in the midst of thousands of retirees trying to pretend that you're retired too. It's, well, you're not supposed to laugh.
It's a laugh of recognition of truth.
Of course, recognition of truth. Yes, we understand. All right. So, right. So here we are. It is a Thursday. Today's a Thursday.
Yes.
Yes. Michelle Auerbell. These are words that go together well. What the hell? So you got something for us?
I mean, do you have any suggestions for someone trying to still integrate that belief that they are enough? Working
Well,
through that, do you have any suggestions for that?
you see, the dynamic ultimately is as you make that connection to the divine within to that spark of energy to the, beyond the dynamics of how shall we explain this? So many of the dynamics of your beliefs and judgments are, what shall we say, ultimately have been humanity created. And that includes the dynamics of your belief systems, your gods, your leadership, what you feel about yourself. Ultimately, the easiest thing to do is say, screw it. I don't believe anything. Where have you been told truth in your life? Other than speaking with us for 5 minutes, but there is that dynamic. How often are you absorbing a dynamic of truth, or how often are you absorbing someone else's version of the truth? And sometimes it is difficult to discern what is yours and what is someone else's. Because the tendency is to want to go along to get along, but the people that we primarily talk to are usually people that are seeking their own authenticity. But they don't realize that once you have found that dynamic of that authenticity, that's when you need others.
Mhm.
That's when you need others. Because being authentic requires you to be vulnerable. And that dynamic of that vulnerability generally keeps you all locked into your old ways of doing and being because those are the methods that you created in order to allow yourselves to be safe. But we wish to tell you it's a dynamic now, so much more of making the love choice rather than the fear choices. And so, if you can break it down binarily in that sort of way, now we do realize that there are many situations that you face that are not black and white in that sort of way. But we would say that each one of those situations has a core truth and a core lie attached to it. And as you can begin to identify that, you can have the objectivity and the discernment to be able to make those choices that allow you to move forward, gain more experience, gain more love, gain more understanding, have more fun, be more who you really are. Are we preaching?
No, but it's a good one.
Now, we're not sure we answered your question. We're not even sure what your question was.
I mean, suggestions for integrating the belief that, you are enough. And so what I surmise is you begin with discernment, separating, what's your truth, what's theirs, what feels right, and then
Well, that's
getting
the
comfortable
bottom
with
line, isn't it? Yeah,
the
yeah, that's the bottom line, isn't it? The thing is that you believe that not you particularly, but there is a whole dynamic of belief within your system that you're not enough on your own. And so, especially being in a woman's body at this time in this particular incarnation. Now, you have to understand you chose a woman's body just so you could face these dynamics of energy, just so that you could, what shall we say, be one of those that are creating a new template of existence. Right. And you're also, as you are, so many of you are right now establishing this dynamic of who is it that you're going to be. And it's so hard to tell because, especially over the next couple of years, more and more of this dynamic of this separation is taking place. More and more people are being asked, hey, have you got a soul? Look at how many
Are
people
you
in your
asking me?
world.
Yes.
We don't mean you particularly, but we are saying, how many people in your world recently have been asked, do you have a soul? And how many people have proven that they do not? Isn't that the most frightening part about the whole dynamic? Because you were seeing this dynamic of yeah, we're talking about Kirk and all of that, but the energy that has happened from that. But we were speaking with someone, the channel was speaking with someone a little earlier today about the dynamic of how this was also purposeful. That, in fact, a number of weeks ago, we believe we put out a video kind of lamenting the fact that most people don't have a moral compass any longer. And but what quicker way could that dynamic of that moral compass be instilled in a whole bunch of people who are longing for it and yet have not found it except through a dynamic of a fundamentalist dynamic. And in this case, we're talking about fundamentalist kind of Christianity, which is so easy for people to accept in that. So, in other words, there's already a template that exists. Now, that does not mean that their consciousness, that their relationship with all that is not going to grow from there. But it's certainly a good place to access a template that has a moral compass. And in fact, you see, there is a prime example of divine intent. Yes, we come around the circle. But, that is a prime example of divine intent. Now, Adrian has asked us, a couple of people have asked us recently, well, how do you feel about the dynamic of Charlie Kirk? And we say, well, Charlie was in a way like Jesus. They came in for a specific set of time to accomplish a specific dynamic, and it was more important the dynamic of what occurs after their leaving than their actual leaving. And so if you look at the dynamic, he is having and has had much more impact in his demise. Well, one would say that is what prime examples of divine intent can you have other than something like that? There is the tragedy. Oh, he was 31 years old. He had a wife and children and all of that stuff. But there was just the fact that he was a leader and he was so much more than just that. And so, all right, all right. Yes, you have something?
I have a couple of things. So you talked about women who came in who would make a different map around empowerment. And I hope and question whether I can help make that map without having to be alone in order to make that map. To know that I'm enough on my own without having to be in a situation where I'm all on my
Well,
own.
see, here's a situation where you talk to any number of the people that know you, they would say, "What are you, crazy? Are you enough? You're more than enough."
Well,
You know,
what
well,
other,
they don't know you in your dysfunction,
all
but
right.
which is 24 hours. No, we're joking.
But you didn't really answer that question, but I hear some of what you're saying. So we'll go on to something else, which was that you've been talking recently, the channel's been talking about that we're still at that point of deciding whether we as a consciousness are going to go the way of Atlantis or we're going to rise.
That's not really true. We just use it as a dynamic of an example of a repetitive situation. It's one of those situations where history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it rhymes. So you get that sort of dynamic, and that's what energetically you're coming around to the same situation. The Atlanteans were very much divided and a divided people. There were some people that, first of all, they were technologically very far advanced with quartz and with crystals and with piezoelectronic equipment and all of that stuff. And they were easily technologically as advanced, perhaps even more advanced than you are now. But they had one group of people that believed in the old ways, believed in the oneness, believed in the connection of all humanity. And then there was another group that was greedy and really didn't care about any of that and just wished to exploit all of that technology in order to amass more wealth and amass more greed. And it was that energy, that conflicting energy that came through and was amplified, in fact, through the dynamics of crystals, that in fact created that whole cataclysm where a whole civilization basically sunk beneath the ocean, leaving only remnants of it around the world, where you see those technologically advanced things like those stones that fit together in Ollantaytambo and places like that,
Mhm.
where there it would be impossible to reproduce that even today with modern equipment, and that is basically because of the leftover energy from the vestiges of Atlantis that was, many thousands and thousands of years ago. So, but the dynamic ultimately was just like then. There are two groups of people. One group of people, as the channel has been saying, group of people seem to have souls, and the others seem not to.
And
And we say seem.
just for clarification for the audience, when you're speaking about soul, you're talking about a connection to the divine.
We are talking about a dynamic of energy that we can say to you, depending on the life that you have chosen to live in this lifetime, in this physical existence. Sometimes your soul and your higher self don't pay a lot of attention to you.
Okay.
Can we make it any more clear than that?
So in other words, do you mean it's like just they're a very lost soul?
No, because they'll get another shot. There is
You mean in
reincarnation.
this lifetime? In this lifetime or in another lifetime?
No, in another lifetime.
Oh, yeah. So just in this lifetime, they a lost soul, meaning they've kind of lost their connection a little bit. Like
Sure.
it's not that they don't have.
How many people do you know that have absolutely no connection at all? That they're so wrapped up in their, what shall we say, their trivialities
Mhm.
that they hardly ever think even a serious thought, unless their reality comes caving in on them in such a way as to force them in a certain direction. And we would say to you that each of you, in your own way, has had that time in your lives when that dynamic has forced you to move, where, and you can either choose to move or not. You can either choose that new relationship that's going to be risky, or you can choose the old way. There's always those dynamics of that choice, and sometimes the most loving choice for you is more risky. So, right, right. You have something you wish to say? Yes.
Yes, so I heard you say the power of making the loving choice rather than the fear-based choice. That's an important
Very.
option that we have. And that in terms of being more authentic, this can require vulnerability.
Absolutely.
So I'm paraphrasing what I heard you say.
Yes.
And I heard both Shell and Adrian bring up the question of being enough. How can I know that I'm enough? So I'm linking the things I heard you say and Adrian and Shell's question, that to make the loving choice, to become more authentic, this time of evolution is asking of us to reconnect to the divine source.
Correct.
And if we are connecting, that will help us to know that we are more than enough.
Correct.
What advice, insight, exercises, and suggestions do you have for us to utilize where we can work in our very human way to build self-esteem as adults,
Sure.
most of us, and to reconnect, to remember our
Sure.
divine
Sure.
connection?
You can stop. The easiest thing that you can do is you can stop listening to that voice inside your head that tells you you're not good enough. All right, that's the primary thing, because know that that piece of you is your negative ego. Know that that piece of you always lies to you. And you would no more abide a liar in your daily life. Let's look at, everybody's tolerance is different. Some people can abide liars incredibly, but some people cannot stand having lies in their life. And so why would you have a voice inside your head that keeps telling you that you're not good enough, that you're this or you're that or the other thing, or you're anything other than a divine being manifested in a physical body? You're not intended to be perfect. You're intended to have a life and to work it out. And to work it out. And it is that fun part that is the working out of it, because you do, as you well know, even though you feel like you have sacrificed in many ways, you know who you are. And that is more satisfying and more real than anything you could develop from the outside. It's dynamic of that blossoming of that, what you call knowing, but it's knowing with a capital K. Excuse us.
Interesting how in our English language, the K is silent.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We hope that cleared things up a little bit, but it is, again, there is that whole dynamic. The easiest way to overcome that dynamic of not good enough, just say, I'm good enough. I'm here now. I am here now. Bing.
Back to the 4 breath.
Yeah. Well, if you need to do it,
Hmm.
if you need to do it, again, it's a 4-beat thing. So you're right.
Words.
Yeah. Yep. All right.